You know that feeling when you open a new game for Christmas and you're ready to play and then there's a sticker at the bottom of the box that says rules sold separately? Why would that be there? And then you remember, I bought a Games Workshop product. So you find out that the rules you bought are not the current rules. There are new rules with new points, and so you get the newest rules which fixes some of the old problems but introduces new problems. Oh, and the full army that you got has changed in points, so it no longer is a full army but just under a full army, so now you'll have to buy more models to get a full army, and it isn't even Christmas anymore, it's June. But June 18 months later. So points changes have been adding to some ongoing problems with 40k. While no army is terrible right now, not even Drukhari, but that's for another time, there are problems when you change points at the same time as adding rules. Votan and Deathguard went way up after they got a helping of each. Genestealer Cult got a points increase and a rules nerf, and are now struggling to make lists that aren't incredibly heavy on neophytes and acolytes with demo charges. Now, I don't do video essays. I don't want this to be a video essay, but I had a lot of thoughts about points, and if I leave it any longer, it will be January and the points will have changed. Again. And maybe another codex will be out and the points in that book will be invalid. Again. And I would have to change all of the examples that I already had. And add more. I think the points are changing too often. And the way points are handled is not a great system right now. While watching or listening to this video, I want you to keep in mind what a new person would think if they just got into the hobby. My idea of that is you would pick an army that you like, maybe following some kind of question-answer chart in a video. You like the models, you like the background, you like the tactics of that army. You buy and then build to a points value you are comfortable with and then play lots and lots of games. That is what I think buying an army should be. An almost fixed thing, and then you can expand it later if you really want. In my Discord group, feel free to join, link is in the description, Stillmania was brought up from earlier Games Workshop times. Earlier being a relative term when you've been playing since 2nd edition. But this is the perfect example of what I expect new players to be like. Use WYSIWYG. Learn to use your units, even the bad ones. Play with the same units regardless of the meta, because that is the army you have. Try new tactics, try new detachments, and see if they work for you. Don't add a new unit and say, oh, they're rubbish if you lose, and then never use them again. If that was the case, then my Shadow Sword would not have seen more than 2 games, and it is doing some work for me right now. Because I now know how to use it. So this isn't so much get good by changing your army list or changing your army completely, but get better with the army you've got. I hope this is not too different from what you think a new player would expect when they get into the game. But Stillmania is what I will have in mind when I'm considering these points changes. All of the equipment on all of your units is free. That's not going to be the focus of the video. I've already done a video on that. It did well. I wonder where I got the idea to make this video. With points the same for a unit regardless of the weapons it has, it's easy for Games Workshop to fix and change them. In theory, every 3 months, but currently, especially for Space Marine players, the points have been changing on a monthly basis. We just had the December points release, which has updated Adeptus Mechanicus points and Necron points, so if you got the codexes, the points in them are invalid. Something that would be rather confusing for new players. With the points constantly changing and changing often, points mainly going down for balance, this has more problems than positives, but there are some good sides that I'd like to talk about first. I don't want to be just a negative person saying, it's bad, it's evil, it's wrong, we can do nothing about it. There are things we can do, but let's look at the good things first. When an app is the main way to build an army and the points are automatically updated there, that makes it very accessible. If you know, the points are free online, and you know where to go for them, and you can just type into a search engine of your choice, oh Jeeves, what are the current points for Warhammer 40,000? And you should find it from Warhammer Community. It's definitely easier. Making an army list is very quick and not as granular as you're trying to remember off the top of your head. Okay, I have some of those acolytes, I've got some of those weapons. Do I have 3 or 4 demo charges in that squad? I don't know. You can just look up, yep, some acolytes, that's the number. Some neophytes, that'll do. So it is a lot quicker, and I like that. If 2 people turn up to play a game, and neither of them have an army list ready, it doesn't take a long time of back and forth and thinking, I'll take this model, but maybe not this model, or I'll prep a melter gun, but then that's going to cost so many points, so I better not take too many of them. You can get on to actually playing the game. With points changes being frequent, issues do get fixed. We have seen compared to the start of 10th edition to now, things are a lot better, more balanced as far as different units are concerned. And so in a casual setting, you're not just being obliterated by a couple of armies. But that doesn't mean the points are perfect. Nor will they ever be. But underperforming factions will get help. Unlike in earlier editions when it was just set until you got a new codex. And overperforming factions will get pulled down to more of a level playing field. It may just take another 6 months. Also, if a faction only has one playstyle to win competitively, looking at you, Gene Stealer Cult, then this can be fixed with minor points changes. Battle Sisters are in a pretty good place with a lot of units working, and even poorly performing units that look bad on paper have a good use. The Novitiates look bad. I was willing to rank them badly in my tier list, but their rerolls are great with a Palatine or Preacher who has the Blade of St. Eleanor. A Missionary does not go well with Arcoflagellants. Seems like a really bad choice. And I think it is. But with a shotgun that has Assault, you can advance and still complete secondary actions in the first turn. I don't think that's the best use of points, but we have options. But the points changing often has problems. It's not as bad, but similar to 9th edition. For casual players, how are you going to know about all the balance patches and updates and rules changes and changing tactics? I mean, to keep up with that, you'd have to subscribe to my channel or something, I don't know. But it can be irritating when someone says, oh yes, I've got Armor of Contempt. -1 armor penetration because I'm wearing power armor. That's not in the core rulebook. That's not in the unit rules. That's not in the codex. It sounds made up because a company is putting out changes, balance patches, for a game that isn't digital. So a change to Overwatch, I mean the game Overwatch, not the stratagem, that affects people immediately as soon as they try and log in for a game. They update to the new version, they are playing the new version, same as everyone else. If Games Workshop updates Overwatch, now the stratagem, the only people who are going to know are people who have kept up with the changes on the Games Workshop community website, or YouTubers who have kept up with the Games Workshop community website. And it can mean that you're playing 2 different games with 2 different rule sets when it should just be the same game. Now, if the points were the only thing that changed, that would be fine, but we are also getting rules changes. Unit changes and army rule changes that are harder to track because they're not all kept in one place. Games Workshop keeps adding and changing rules. There's some in the balance patch PDF, there's some in the FAQ, there's some in the designer's commentary for what the rules are meant to be like. When they do update the index PDFs to show the changes, it's taking them an extra month. And then it's not done amazingly because the Gene Stealer cult suddenly doubled in size. And I was like, oh, what's this? New units? No, they just have 2 of all of the different unit data cards. And they still haven't fixed the Jackal Alphas. So the Jackal Alphas continues to only save if you roll a 5. It's not a 5+. So they have now updated the index PDFs, but it took till the end of October to reflect September balance patch changes. Things like the Skitarii having a different save, Death Guard having a whole nother rule that you don't know about, and not all of these rules have been updated. You can forget rules that are not right there in front of you. It happened to me. Flawless. Perfect me. I talked about Meticulous Planner and read the rule as it was written right in front of me in the updated index. But because I was recording at a bad time of day when the sleepy comes for you, I forgot that it is also affected by the limit to battle tactics. You can only use it on battle tactics. So thanks to the people who spotted that and added a correction for others in the comments. How many rules are you going to forget in the heat of the moment in a game when the rules you're looking at are not how the rules actually are? I would have said that you need to also buy the codexes so you get updated points and rules, but in all of the codexes in 10th edition, the points have been superseded by an online document a few weeks after release. Admech and Necron's getting theirs very recently. The rules changes can present new problems, new situations, new fun things, tactical problems for you to solve in-game. If you're playing against Necrons, you're no longer figuring out how to blow up a brick of Lichguard, you're figuring out how are you going to deal with the number of Lichguard that are on the table now that their points have been so reduced. Dealing with quantity of toughness, not quality of toughness. But the constant points changes going up and then possibly down again, then maybe back up, means that when you're picking your army for 2,000 points, or less than that, such as in the recent video I did where I suggested a couple of army lists for 1,000 points and 1,500 points for new players for Gene Stealer Cult, in another month, those army lists will not add up correctly. And you'll have to figure out a new army. So you'll add more units and maybe go over 2k, and then the points go up and you are under 2k. Ideally, you'd find yourself opponents that don't care if you're 20 points under, and then a few weeks later, with exactly the same army, you're 20 points over. But that doesn't always happen. Points going down has extra problems. Let's be cynical for a moment, but Games Workshop can use points reductions and changes to drive sales. If they lower the points on factions, then it sounds good to players of that army, but then the new players with a smaller collection need to buy more to get to that 1k and 2k mark to start playing games with the suggested game size. If you can't get a fix on your first 1000 points, then it doesn't matter that you've made a list, and you start buying and building and painting the models towards that list, then the points change and you have to come up with a new list. It can seem like you'll never get there. If you're buying towards a milestone of 1000 points, well, a 1000 point list from last edition is now about 850 points. So that's another box or two that you would have to buy to get back to that 1000 points. The pennies needed to get up to the next points level go up, and then you see some absurd point-to-pound conversions, like the Pyrovore. The Pyrovore is 30 points for one. The Pyrovore costs £30 for one. That is an awful conversion of points to pounds. I hope you don't want more than one, and you're only getting it because you really like the model. It's awful if you don't like the model, and the cost of them goes up and up beyond inflation. This is not like other game systems, where you can buy a full Infinity team, and that is you done. That is the army, it is set. This is just egregious. Armies, with their points reduced, don't feel like themselves. You can get hoarded by elite armies. Space Marines can have a full battle company at 2000 points. Death Guard outnumber Genestealer Cult. Yeah, we're back to guerrilla fighting against a tougher and more numerous enemy, but it doesn't seem right for the army theme. And this has happened a few times as points reductions have coincided with rules changes. And that is assuming your faction points go down. Most factions had reductions, but those that went up feel even weirder, like you're not meant to be playing them. That is the feeling coming from several Adeptus Custodes players in my comments. Even with the points modifications, so often we have a lot of disparity because the points reductions are not relative across factions. You will have seen from the thumbnail that there can be a very big points gaps for very similar models. So the Deathwatch Kill Team Proteus, a unit of 5 is 180 points. These are just Deathwatch veteran models. They are 36 points per model. The same unit with an arguably better unit rule, re-rolling all hits, conditionally, is better than +1 to hit, conditionally, when you already have a high ballistic skill. The Deathwatch veterans are 110 points. That's 22 points per model, and they get a sergeant with a Xenophase blade, if you were a radical heretic. And you have OC2 instead of OC1 and their battle line. Why can't Games Workshop be more detailed in their points? Put the Proteus kill team at 100 points for 5, or 120 for an inbuild cost because they can raise their unit toughness to toughness 5 with enough Terminators and bikes. But then you could add on more models of different costs depending on what you want, Terminators, bikers, or jump pack veterans. They could each have their own cost, with the 4 Terminators, 1 bike and 5 Deathwatch veterans being 360 points. We know that Games Workshop can do it. We have seen it on the Inquisitorial Henchmen. So we know that they also know how to code it into their app as well. And for the very, very similar profile of a Space Marine in black power armor with a hatred of aliens, the Black Templars Crusader squad is 13 points for a Marine. And that is a Marine in full power armor and a bolt gun, not a scout-like neophyte. And I don't know if it's correct that a Battle Sister costs 10 points per martyr, and a Cabalite Warrior is 11 points per masochist. Now let's look at the new Ballistus Dreadnought. It has a twin las cannon and a missile launcher. Or you can have a regular Dreadnought with a twin las cannon and a missile launcher. Even if Games Workshop was going to replace the Firstborn Dreadnought, which doesn't seem to be happening this edition, thankfully, why are the points so similar when the platforms carrying the weapons are not? For very few extra points, the Ballistus Dreadnought is way better than the regular Space Marine Dreadnought. Let's not make this a full-on complaint. Let's give solutions and advice, both to Games Workshop, who will not watch or listen to my video, and yourselves, who you currently am listening. If Games Workshop put the points up of a lot of units, we wouldn't need as many units to get to playing the game. We wouldn't burn out thinking that we'll never get to a full army. A full Star Wars Legion force is small, and at least 2 of their armies can be painted using just white spray paint. One way that Games Workshop could increase points on almost all units is to bring back points for weapons. Now, not all of them need extra points. as we saw towards the end of 9th edition. Though 40k is never going to be truly balanced, a bolt pistol over a las pistol is not such a massive jump to require a points increase, but a plasma pistol does. I know the bolt pistol is objectively better than a las pistol, but that is really only going to matter for tournaments where you try and squeeze every drop of value out of everything instead of my feeling of, I paint pretty models. I want to play with pretty models, I want to name them and make pew pew noises with them in games with my friends. It may not be optimal for the meta, but my canoness needs her emotional support magifier because they have matching hats. But I can see why Games Workshop likes it when the weapons don't cost additional points. It isn't as hard for them to be changed and staff don't have to get into the gritty details of, okay, a plasma pistol should cost more, maybe 5 points more, but is it going to cost 5 points more just on this unit, but not on this unit? Different idea. If they let us add models to units to make the points go up, without having different levels of locked unit sizes, because 2 Crusaders is the same cost as 1 Crusader, but 3 Crusaders cost the same as 4 Crusaders. That's weird, just have a minimum, and then let us add to that until you get to a maximum. Points per model. Although I was okay with understrength units in the past, it just cost command points to field them. Now that we, thankfully, don't start with any command points, that isn't an option. But it solves part of an issue because you can add a model at a time as you build and paint it, assuming you do it individually rather than in batch painting, and as you do that, your points increase. We could just choose to play casually with points per models. So we know Games Workshop can do it, because they did it very recently, and we've also seen how it can be really bad. And I know that there will be advice from very sensible people saying, why not just play like that? Keep playing casually. But we've seen that more and more, Games Workshop is pushing towards this tournament level, competitive play style. If you suggest using a Legends unit, how many people are going to play with it in your local group? Proportionally, this many for my community, but the Stillman idea of how we play the game has gone in favour of get that money, sell them models, change them points just enough. If Games Workshop is going to increase points every 3 months, why not change points every time there is a new codex released? Or after a few weeks of community playtesting, the only real playtesting that the games get. And I don't mean we update the points like we have with the Admech and the Necrons and the Tyranids and the Space Marines after their codex comes out to reflect the rules, which the points previously didn't. I mean a general across-the-board tweak. It stops a codex overperforming or underperforming, and if they did a very small patch too related to the codex, it could prevent issues like Space Marine sub-factions having mainline characters not be able to join their units. Like at the start of the edition, a Space Marine captain was able to join a Proteus kill team. Now they can't, because of how the rules currently are. Hi, it's post-production Von Carmian here. Haven't seen me in a while. While I was recording this, Games Workshop has done a little update to say that, yeah, the Space Marine characters that could join Deathwatch kill teams and other Blood Angels and Space Wolf factions special units, it's now back to how it was at the start of 10th edition. The Games Workshop document listing the changes to characters and the units they can join is linked in the description. So maybe, yeah, the Games Workshop does fix things, but this is like 6 weeks after the issue first came up. I think it could have been resolved faster, and I'm looking forward to a much better FAQ in January. Okay, I'll leave me to it. Have fun. But for a company, I understand that they want to do the minimum amount of work changing it while people will stay mostly happy. They are only ever going to get things to a good enough level. Eldar could be 55% win rate and Battle Sisters 46% win rate forever, and that would work for them. And I know that these solutions are not perfect, because I have both suggested more changes and also fewer changes. Is this what it's like sitting on the fence? It's just sharp and pointy and I'm complaining. For players as well as Games Workshop, if you let people play with points per model rather than points per unit, that could be much better. If I have 6 Arco-Flagellants, then I want to use them as a 6 without paying for them as a unit of 10. There is some balance for competitive play. If you think tournament people will start taking squads of 9 so that they take 1 less shot from blast weapons, then they are also going to miss out on a heavy weapon that are 1 in 10 models. So I do know that my solutions are not perfect. But if I thought about this any longer, then the next point change would be here and I might still feel this way, but the examples might be all off. Do you think that the points are weird this edition? I think they're weird this edition. But I did at least try and leave you with some recommendations that you can have a go at instead of just ranting at a screen, which is certainly a style and one I was much closer to the last time I talked about points. That video also gives some more explanations about why the points are like this for 10th edition. My darlings and viewers, have a great day of 40k!